Welcome everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So that's me, Mary Beth Hertz. I teach in Philadelphia. So that's my school, Science Leadership Academy at Bieber. We are one-to-one Chromebook school. Kids take them home. Every kid has one in the classroom. So part of what you're getting today is kind of a curriculum. So we do like a boot camp for them. So part of what I teach digital literacy, media literacy, digital citizenship. So this is kind of the media literacy part of my curriculum, so that as far as preparing kids for one of our core values is research, right? So you can't have a core value of research and not teach kids some basic media literacy skills. By the way, my voice, yes, no, okay. So basically, today is listed as an interactive session. And so there's going to be a little bit of interactivity, so I'll talk at you a little bit to kind of set things up, and then we'll be using Pear Deck to kind of get some conversation going, and then you'll also get a chance to actually talk to each other and work with, so just be prepared. I'm going to ask you to work with people towards the end. So, how many people have like a kid who's totally obsessed with Pokemon? Anybody? Okay. Mine is just discovered it. We're all screwed. So when I saw this, I was like, okay. So that's my Pokemon kid right here. So I teach, like I said, I teach in a one-to-one school. That student uses his own laptop, but we use Chromebooks. And that's my daughter. She just turned 2. She's throwing up today, so that's been fun. And then I also have a book that kind of has all this stuff in it, which I have a copy of it up front at the end if you're just interested in kind of checking it out to see what's in it. But that is me. And this is weird because I'm going to have to I guess I can stand here, but I feel like we'll see how it goes. So I'd like to tell people what's coming. So this is kind of the session in a nutshell. So we can't talk about media literacy and crop detection if we don't know what it is. So we'll just briefly make sure we understand what media literacy actually is. You're going to get a chance to test your media literacy skills. I'm going to show you a sample student project that I did this year, and we'll just kind of briefly discuss why this all matters, right? And I kind of show a picture of my kids there because all this stuff to me matters for them and the world that they are going to inhabit or do inhabit and will continue to. And then we'll have reflection, wrap up, questions, that kind of stuff. So has anybody ever heard this quote or seen it or read it? No? Okay. So this is where crop detection comes from. So Ernest Hemingway famously said this. He did not use the word crap. So this term crop detection was actually coined. Was coined by this guy. How many people know this guy? Okay. This guy you can thank for a lot of stuff. He's at Stanford, Howard Rheingold. That's his book NetSmart, which came out in 2012. He has been on the forefront of this stuff for a really long time. So in fact, the quote that I'm going to read to you, only because people in the back might not be able to see it, was from 2009, like over 10 years ago. He said, unless a great many people learn the basics of online crop detection, ooh, I totally spelled that wrong, and wow, sorry about that. And begin applying their critical faculties en masse, and very soon, I fear for the future of the internet as a useful source of credible news, medical advice, financial information, educational resources, and scholarly and scientific research. So he said that 10 years ago. So that's why I look at him as, this book and his kind of frame set of knowledge, he coined that term crop detection. He uses it. Oh wait, I don't have to walk behind it. So, anybody ever heard of Renee Hobbs? Yes. Okay, so Renee Hobbs is awesome. She's at a University of Rhode Island. She used to be in Philadelphia at Temple. She runs the Media Education Lab. If you love media literacy and you want to become an expert, she runs a summer institute for teachers at the University of Rhode Island. And so she basically, this is like her life. She's been doing this back before, where we were looking at magazines, right, and analyzing advertisements in magazines, and before the Web 2.0 and all that stuff. So she's also a really good resource as well. And I say all this because all the work, it's all of a sudden people are paying attention to this stuff, right, because of kind of the world we're in. But this idea of media literacy is not something new, and it does not just involve the internet, right? This session is going to be focused obviously on more of the internet stuff, but just to kind of, when we talk about defining media literacy, it goes beyond just the internet. So media right, has to do with communication. And so this is just from like dictionary.com, right? Just if you Google media definition, and this is what comes up. And one part that I think is really important from this definition, oops, sorry, animation fail, is this part, right? That media, the purpose of media is to communicate, but it's also to communicate and influence people widely, right? So this is kind of the role of media, but it's also something that we have to think about when we're analyzing media, and what is the purpose behind what the media is trying to do. So I like to, when I teach kids about media literacy, I like to just make sure they understand what we mean by media, because to them, they're like, social media. I know what media is, right? But social media is just one kind of media. So we, podcasts, websites, even the radio, right? Like old school radio, internet radio, whatever it is, and even books, right? Magazines, newspapers, these are all forms of media, and they all have some kind of purpose for communicating something and influencing our thoughts as well. So there's 3 places that I go to. These are on the bullet points right there when I look at these definitions. This is kind of a synthesis of their definitions. So a lot of us have probably heard of common sense media because we probably use some of their lessons and things like that. But these other 2 organizations, the Center for Media Literacy, also has a very useful framework for asking questions with kids, even as little as kindergarten, right, about these kinds of forms of media. And then there's the National Association for Media Literacy and Education. I will pause to say, if you are in the app and you want any of these resources, there is a document that every single thing I'm talking about or mentioning should be in that document, including the slides. So, and there'll be a bit.ly at the end so that you can access the document if you're not in the app. So one of the things I think we focus really heavily on the top part of media literacy, and we sometimes forget about this bottom part of media literacy. So something you'll see in the project that I wanted kids to do was to understand, like, sure, we can analyze stuff, but what does it mean to be on the other end, right? Like, because once you start creating stuff and have to think about your own purposes, it helps you with that process of analyzing other people's purposes. So that creation and communication part is just as important as knowing how to analyze and everything. So today's going to be more focused on the first 3 bullet points because we're detecting, right? We're being detectives. But just for me, I want to make sure people don't forget how important it is to also have kids creating and communicating themselves using various forms of media. How many people have heard of this study that Stanford did? Stanford History Group? Okay, so that was in the session description, right? That was listed there. So we will do a sample little activity from this. So this came out, the study was done between 2015 and 2016. But basically what they did was they had high school students and college students do a variety of tasks. So we're going to do the homepage analysis task today. It had them evaluate social media claims and also just like evidence. It was a picture they had to evaluate, and then a rubric for how well the students were able to tell whether what they were looking at was real, accurate, etc. So this is free. This is actually in the resources or linked to the PDF. So it's a free resource. So I totally steal their lessons and use them in my classes. So they, but it's like what's crazy is this was 2015 and 16, and here we are, and these things are still, still useful, still applicable, and we still are struggling with getting kids to where they need to be. Their study revealed that we have a lot of work to do. So we still have a lot of work to do. But what I love about this is, like I said, they have these specific tasks, an overview of the tasks, and then they have a rubric for how to score how well kids did in their analysis of those things. Has anybody ever used this lesson from Common Sense Media? Okay, so Common Sense Media is awesome. They have, you sign up for free, and they have free lessons for like every grade level in all different ways. Digital citizenship, media literacy. This one is one of my favorite ones because this idea of reading laterally, how many people have heard that term? A couple people, okay? Super important. So this guy right here, John Green, he wrote The Fault in Our Stars. So this is actually from the Common Sense Media, it's from their lesson, and he talks about reading laterally. So websites, right, we read vertically, right? And they kind of contain us within the website because we're always scrolling. That's reading vertically. But what he's arguing is we need to stop trusting what's here or vertically, and he says we need to leave the website and read laterally and open up a new tab and as many tabs as we need to actually confirm what we're reading. So one of the concepts I really pushed in my kids this year, not today, maybe tomorrow, that is this idea of leaving where you are, going someplace else, and reading this way instead of just this way. And that distinction helped them a lot. Did you leave the site? Because we've been teaching forever, looking at the website and analyzing the website as like its own thing. But when you leave the website, it can actually teach you more than just analyzing it. And like he says in the video, because it's a video that I watched like a little brief segment of it. These fake websites know now. They know that they have to have quality images. They know they can't have spelling mistakes. All those little like check boxes we teach kids about how to check websites, that doesn't work anymore because people are slick, and it's so easy for anybody to go to a website or like one of those website builders and make something that looks so professional that we can't just read vertically anymore. We have to read laterally. So these are the top question, that one, the who wrote this and why. This is like the number one question that I try to drill into kids when we're looking at stuff. Who wrote this? Why did they write it? And the kids will say, but Ms. Hertz, there's no author. And I'm like, sometimes the information that's not there is just as important as the information that is there. And that could be problematic, right? We're looking at an Onion article and there's no author, right? They know now it's drilled into them, like, it says in Onion, it's not real. Laugh at it. And then, is it trying to sell me something, trying to sway my opinion? This last one, to me, is really important, especially now, even like, I don't even know what news is anymore, because news is like all opinion anymore. And so, is this person trying to make me feel some kind of way, right? And so, if you're reading something and it's boring, that might actually be a good thing, right? Maybe it's actually good because they're actually giving you facts and information, and they're not trying to make you feel a certain way about the topic. At the same time, just because it makes you feel some way doesn't mean it's a bad source, right? It can still be a useful source, but you have to keep in the back of your mind that there's a bias. Bias is one of the hardest things to teach. And partially because when you're teaching media literacy, you're actually teaching reading skills. And if kids don't have those basic reading skills of vocabulary and just kind of, understanding just straight up reading, right? This kind of stuff is hard. Especially with ELL learners, right? That's something I had to work with our ESOL teacher about, like, how do I teach this stuff when kids don't understand what, certain words even mean. And I even have to go over, like, in the climate that we're in now, like, what does it mean when someone says you're left or you're right? I have them take a little quiz to, like, they don't know what half the stuff means, but, to kind of take a little, like, personality quiz. Are you left or are you right? Are you liberal or are you conservative? Just so they can begin to understand what people mean about those things. And I teach high school. Obviously, if you're working with the younger grades, there's different kinds of conversations you can have around whether do you agree with the author? Well, if you agree, they must be trying to tell you something, right? If you have an opinion about what they're saying, potentially they're trying to give you an opinion rather than a fact. So this is technically what craft detection stands for when I use it in a session title. This is not what Howard Rheingold came up with. This is kind of what people took it to, where people took it to. It's an acronym that basically helps guide kids. But again, this is moving into this lateral reading. It used to be like, oh, it has an author. Great. Okay, but then okay, who is the author? Are they like a verified Twitter, Associated Press reporter who's won a Pulitzer Prize? Or when you go and look up the author, do all you see are like articles by that author on the same website and you really have no information about them, right? So the authority piece does require the lateral reading. Currency, that one really is just, so currency and relevance tie into kind of research skills in the sense, like, I don't know if you've ever done a research project and a kid spends all this time and they're like doing all this research and take all this notes, you're like, this is nothing to do with the topic. This is nothing to do with what you're actually researching, and they haven't really made that connection. So even in the younger grades, like, I'm researching blah, 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 blah. Does this help me find that information is the relevance piece. I'm a big fan of custom Google search engines, if you've ever made one, where you can actually plug websites in that you want them to use. So they're learning how to use search terms and they're learning how to do that, but you've kind of curated the sites that they go to so you know they're finding quality sites. And so sometimes people spell crap with 2 A's. And the second A, the accuracy part, has to do with, are there charts, are there graphs, are there citations, right? So that goes to the looking for the evidence that what they're presenting is not just they went to Google Drawings and made a nice little thing and like put it up there, right? This is actual evidence, citing studies, things like that. And then that purpose and point of view goes back to who wrote this and why. Like, why did they write this? I'm not gonna lie, like this is not easy. And I will tell you that the chances of a kid being able to do this 100% successfully is very limited, right? You're going to have kids who are going to not do this correctly. And part of it is the conversation that comes out of that, right? So if they say, if they have an answer that's not complete, right? They didn't maybe do their full research on it, or they didn't find, you know, what you think is like the correct answer as far as what you were hoping they would find, then that's a conversation, right? So when I do this with kids, and I have in the materials, there's a document I use as kind of template, right? Where there's the C, the R, the A, and then there's links, and then they have to analyze them. It really comes down to having conversations about what they found and sitting next to them and looking at the information, which is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and it's never finished. And a lot of times the kids will say, oh, I wish there was just like a magic thing that would just tell me if I can trust it. And you know, the reality is there is no magic anything. Right? You can't trust anything, but in the sense that you should always be critical. But you also walk that fine line. If you teach kids to never trust anything, then you have that problem of the whole like not trusting anything and believing conspiracy theories, right? Like just getting into that, there's a line there. So the other thing, so if you teach little people, you're not walking in there saying, all right, how's your craft detection, right? So another way that people organize it is PARC, or PARCA. It's a little more friendlier, so you can still teach it to the little people, but you're not, you know, using a word that your parents are like, why are you saying that to my kid? So it's the same exact stuff, right, but you're just fixing the letters around. So that's just to show you that option. So we're going to do some interactivity, okay? So if this is, so that is the logo for Pear Deck. So what I'm going, I keep doing this, what I'm going to do, so now that we kind of like understand what media literacy is, we kind of understand, you know, we have a sense of like what media is, we have a sense of kind of this lateral reading, like why we're doing this. What you are going to do is learn something, you may already know it, but you're going to get to practice your skills in a specific way. And this is one of the most useful tools my kids have told me they've ever, like as far as, not Pear Deck, I'm talking about what we're about to do. It's one of the most useful skills that they have found. So Pear Deck will load, I swear. So all you do is you go to joinpd.com and you put that code in. You will see my whole slide deck, but I will fast forward it. You're going to see the Pikachu, but I will fast forward it to where it needs to be. I can't, I'm so used to, you know, as a teacher, it's like freeze your projector, and I can't freeze it. It's crazy. So the good news is when you are using Pear Deck, the code is up in the bottom, or up at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get to the slides. So you should see your slides moving with me. So this is, I'll put this back. So we'll give people a second to get in. Looks like, oh, we have like 26 people in. Okay. Well, it looks like some people are still joining. So how many people have done a reverse image search before? Okay, so most people, like that's usually like 50% of you have. So what you're going to do is I'm going to put a picture up, and you are going to try to answer some questions about that picture. Does anybody need like 34 seconds to get it? No, we're good? Okay. So, and by the way, this is an exact activity that I did in my classroom like a month ago. So, as like I said, I'm trying to give you samples of what you can do. So you should see a little box on the right-hand side, right, where you can put your answers. You're going to click on the image because it will take you to a tab where the image lives. And you can either do a reverse image search or you can do reading laterally, and you're going to try to answer those questions. And I can actually project your answers anonymously on the board. So does anybody need the code again? Are we okay? All right. So you can see if you can figure out where it came from, where the quote came from, what your first thoughts were about the statement. Is the statement true? And then, what did you find and where did you find it? So I'm so used to being able to freeze my screen, so this is interesting. I'm gonna walk around and see. Anybody need help? I give my kids a bunch of time. I'm gonna go a little faster, I think, with you guys. Alright, so somebody said, first thoughts, did they get in trouble? So somebody remembers the story, but they don't know if it's related. Somebody saw Reddit, they may have seen that in the URL of the image, so that's something we can teach our kids. It's like, when you see an image, look at the URL. That will tell you a lot about where the image came from. So somebody's first thought was an anti-Trump post, that it's terrible to steal from a charity. Somebody, looks like somebody's working on, they found it was posted to Twitter, so they found that it was also on Twitter. Sounds like Trump being Trump. Grammar is terrible. They remember the story. They remember it was from St. Jude's. So it looks like somebody actually bypassed the whole like reading well, I shouldn't say bypass reading loudly. Somebody actually went to Snopes directly, it looks like. Do you guys know Snopes? So that's something I teach the kids, especially with social media stuff. That's sometimes hard to like know because it's so current and it's happening right now. That Snopes is a really good place to go. So sometimes people can just go right to Snopes. Yeah, it did. Okay. The reverse image search? Yeah, yeah. So, and so seems to sensationalize goes back to our talking about like who wrote this and why, right? So when it makes you, that's why I asked like how does this make you feel, right? Because my kids were in Philadelphia, we're a very democratic city, right? So they don't like Trump so much. So to them, some of them immediately were like, that, like, oh, it's Trump being Trump, right? They were very, like, it's got to be true because he would do that, right? That was their mindset. But then, if you were in a different, in a different city or a different place where there was a different view, there might be a different response. The kind of response doesn't matter. The fact that you feel some kind of way is what matters, right? The sensationalism of it, the red underlining, right, of the image, that kind of stuff. So somebody says not true. Looks fake. So one of my kids actually said, it looks like somebody opened up Microsoft Paint and like just underlined, like they just felt it didn't look trustworthy because it looked like somebody, it wasn't professionally done, right? It was posted to Twitter, that original quote was from Twitter, so a couple of my kids found the original post that it came from, using capital words, repeating words, originally posted to Twitter. And the image is from Forbes magazine, so somebody dug even deeper and found that the person who posted it to Reddit got it from Forbes magazine. So we were doing that for what, 5-6 minutes, something like that, right? So see how much information we can get from one image in 5 or 6 minutes. And so the statement is true and false. Snopes says it's false because it's not 100% true. So yes, they got in trouble for mishandling money for a children's charity, but no, they have not been banned from running charities in the state of New York. So the kids will have a conversation, right? They say, but it's true. They stole from a charity. So we talk about why is it important that the whole statement's true if we're going to call it true, right? We want to make sure that if we're going to say something's true, that the whole thing is true. And it was funny actually. One of the kids one of my colleagues came up to me and said, I don't know about Miss Trump. I don't know, does she vote for Trump? Like, I don't understand, like, I don't get it. And so to me, like, part of the hard part is making sure that they don't think I'm trying to push something on them, right? As a media literacy person, right? So the fact that they didn't know kind of made me feel like, okay, that's good, because if they think that I have a certain sway, I can't teach this stuff properly, right? I have to teach them to be skeptical of stuff they agree with, but also stuff they disagree with, because this was something that they were like,
they were totally like, this is terrible, right? Because it is this confirmation bias, which is something else we talk about, right? This idea that we tend to believe things that we agree with more than we do with things we don't agree with. And so when they saw it was false, it kind of, forced them to kind of stop and check their own bias, right? They have a bias towards what was in the meme. So let me see if there's anything else here. So somebody gave us the video. So I also like this tool, or Nearpod. I know so they use Nearpod, I don't know, but because it's anonymous and we can talk through people's responses in an anonymous way, in an unthreatening way, but also it helps me gauge, like, where are they as far as their skill set goes and what they're finding. And if I don't see stuff up there it's missing, then I know I have to stop and I have to say, well, and like talk them through the Snopes search, or talk them through, what did you find when you did the reverse image search. I give them all kinds of images, like one's this bicycle, guy on a bicycle with a bear chasing after him. For some reason the internet loves people being chased by bears. So, I give them that image, they do a reverse image search, and they try to find out, is it real, right? And that.
The one with the shark in. No, it's like the shark in the middle of the street during.
Oh, it's in like the sewer.
Oh, yeah, during the hurricane.
The subway stations.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
The New York flooded subway stations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I'm a big fan of giving kids like real things that are current and are relevant, that they can search up, and that they can find that are, and if with little kids, even a reverse image search, you can do like the tree octopus, right, and have them do a reverse image search on the tree octopus. I see people nodding. A lot of people know that site. It's linked in the resources. But the idea is giving them like a skill set, like a toolkit almost, of different things they can try to analyze what they're looking at. So let me hide responses. So you should see this up here. Okay. So this is one of the Stanford lessons. Okay. So you are going to, this is where you get to work with a partner or a team, and you are going to analyze this home page and decide whether, so the little black arrows are pointing to stuff, and you're going to get to decide whether you think they are an advertisement or not. And then you'll just put your numbers in the box, like number 1, yes it is because, or number 2, no it's not because. So the idea is for you guys to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, we'll force you to talk to somebody. But the idea, part of what I try to do also is have kids have conversations around this stuff, right? That they shouldn't be just doing it by themselves. So I'll give you a couple minutes to figure that out. Is that okay? Yeah. You guys still see it? Alright, so
responses in a minute.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna add something on there.
So number one, someone saw the discount code, the coupon, right? So we see 20% off or something like that, right? So we know, bing, 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 that's an ad, right? That one's kind of easy. The second one, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna look and see, hide these real quick to remind myself which one's which. Okay, the second one's okay. So the second one is not informative, is the sponsored content. I see a couple people already said they see sponsored content. So that is something, a red flag, right, for kids when they see sponsored content. I'll put it in the resources, I forgot to, but there's a really great quiz, a fake news quiz that my kids take, where in one of the questions, it uses the Washington Post as a good source. And then in the other question, it's actually the bad source because it's a sponsored content from Bank of America in the Washington Post. So it goes to this idea of like, sure, the Washington Post, you know, it's been around for a long time, it's well known, you know, whether it's biased or not, people can say that, but as far as that particular article, it was sponsored content. So that means that somebody paid money to put that in there, it's an ad, right, and understanding what that means. So we have a conflict here. Some people say not an ad for number 2. Oh no, okay, they both say no. Article based on an opinion, not an advertisement because there is an author. So one thing about sponsored content is sometimes it will have an author. So that's also tricky, right? That it might say by so and so, but then if you don't see the sponsored content, that you might miss that it's actually sponsored content. Not an advertisement, article, opinion piece, sponsored content, coupon code. Okay. So did someone look up Eric Holdhouse, I wonder? Maybe it says has credentials, so maybe somebody actually looked up the author, lateral reading, right? That's an important skill. As far as the second one, you are correct. You got it right. The first one is an ad, the second one was not an ad, and the third one is an ad. One thing is, you know, if you think about the internet, right, this is a home page and it is super lots of stuff going on, right? So part of what's really hard is when kids go to these websites, it's almost hard to focus, right? You don't know where the actual content is sometimes. Nowadays we have ad blockers sometimes. I love cat block, by the way, because it replaces ads with cute pictures of kitties. But you know, even helping kids with that will help them, will kind of like clear things up. But then you have places, which one is it, that you can't even access the site, right, without undoing your ad blocker, right? So we're getting to that point where people are like, we're losing money, right? So you have to whitelist us in your ad blocker or else you can't access our content. So I don't know how much longer ad blockers are actually going to help us out in that way. So yes, we have sponsored content. This one is the actual article, you know, and then you have another ad here. This one looks like this was also an article. But as far as how just to show you the Stanford study, I figured I'd pull this up just to kind of show you. I know this is kind of far away, but this is just to show you the rubric, right? So this is the rubric that they use to see, on like how a kid did on that. And they actually have sample student responses on each level of the rubric. So you can kind of, if you want to do a lesson, you can see, you know, what kind of rubric you can use and then what kinds of answers would show mastery of that concept. So let me ask you this before we actually look. Okay, so I'll show you the project. And I wanted to make sure, it's so small up here, you guys have it on your screens, but, so we used Canva, we used the infographic for Canva.
And basically what I had kids do was to do a poster that we could hang up in the school that would give other kids tips for how to analyze different kinds of media. And so they had to do, so we talk about different kinds of media. They learned how to analyze images, they learned how to analyze videos, articles, websites. So I make sure that I give them tools for each kind of media so that they know what to do when they reach those kind of media. One of the struggles is video, right? You can't copy paste video. You can not easily reverse image search a video, and so that is where the teaching the keywords comes in, right? How do you, when you the Common Sense Media has a good video. It's called Hoaxes, or not video, lesson. It's in it's in the materials, like that doc. It's called Hoaxes and I forget what it's called, but yeah, it has another name. But there's like, they give you 3 sources and then they're all videos. And so the kids have to learn how to do an actual keyword search to find out whether the video is accurate or not. So, so you'll see like lateral reading in here, right? Reverse image searching. So this is check for bias, right? So this is the idea of when they were creating content, they had to think about the process of creating it and what their purpose was, and then also it helped them kind of synthesize everything so that all the skills that we've been learning, they could kind of put them together and then also teach the rest of the students. So this was a very simple project. It only took maybe like a class and a half, like an hour and a half to do. But it helped me know what they learned, but also helped them kind of process everything. So I'm gonna go out of Pear Deck because I have this slide. But before we do that, I've been talking a lot. What questions, anything you guys like I've had that you want me to back up and go over again, or anything that I didn't go over that you want to talk about, or anything? Yeah. The resources link. Someone said that in my, it's so weird. Like my last session, like 50% people could open it, 50% couldn't. You're in the app. Is that where you are? Okay.
The website. From the website works fine.
From the website.
The website works fine.
Then maybe that was somebody. Yeah, because it was weird. It was like working for some people and not. So maybe the app is screwy. Maybe that's what it is. There is a bit.ly for it. I'll skip head to the end. Although you have it probably on your screen right now, because you're in Pear Deck still. But that bit.ly should work to get you to the resources. I mean, is there anything you guys want me to back up on before I give you one more activity to do? I'm scared when there's no question.
What class did you teach that in? Did you do the
Yeah, so it's called an intro to tech class. So it's kind of like every 9th grader gets it because they come from all over the city, and so it's basically, I call it like a boot camp. But the framework is digital literacy, media literacy, and digital citizenship. Those are kind of the 3 main things that we discuss and talk about and learn. Let me see. I'm actually going to put this up here and see if you guys can see it. Because you're not in, you won't be able to see. If you actually Pear Deck, I'm actually going to end the Pear Deck session. So you're going to lose it. And I'm going to have you do one more thing. Can you see that picture, kind of? I know people up front can, in the back it might be hard to see. So this is another lesson that the kids did, and I actually said you can't do a reverse image search. That was one of the rules. So they could only use visual evidence to decide their answer. So on March 11, 2011, there was a large nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. This was posted on Imager, a photo sharing website, in July 2015. So this is, and I can. Do you guys want to be able to see it closer on your screens? I can make it easier to see. It's okay. All right. So I'm curious to know. I'm gonna give you a chance. I want to hear from you guys what you think. So is this? The question basically is this enough information to know that these were the conditions at the time of the disaster. Feel free to call out answers. We won't be able to do it. You've seen the picture before? No? No. So what do you notice first? What's the thing that pops out to you the most? Okay, yeah, the flowers, there's something wrong with the flowers. Yeah, flowers don't look normal. Anything else we notice?
The background's almost black and white, but the color pops on the flowers.
Yeah, it's like a gravel background.
Is that what's behind it?
Yeah, the ground is kind of gravel. So how many people think that this happened? This is evidence of the conditions when this disaster happened. How many people are like, no, this is not conditions where the disaster happened? How many people are still in the middle? They're not sure. Okay. So those people who said, let's say those people said no, since we're going to be analyzing. Because nobody said yes, right? Nobody said yes. So those people said no. What makes you think that? Why are you saying this is not enough information?
Like, how do you know where it was? Like,
It's the
there's
ground,
nothing-
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, if it was like, I mean, you would still need to do more research, but let's just say hypothetically speaking, that it was flowers in front of the power plant,
Mm-hmm.
then at least you would have more background to be able to be like, okay, maybe it would be a little bit more convincing.
Yeah, so that's number one is like how do we even know this is in Japan, right? How do I know it's not just like outside the school somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have that. Anything else? Why you think no? Yeah.
The time lapse between the disaster and the photo being shared is a pretty big gap.
Yeah, so there's that currency part, right? And it's almost like we think about currency sometimes as being it's too old, but sometimes it's like too new, right? It was just posted. Anything else? Yeah.
I'd say it's very easy to make an image look like that. I mean, my 10-year-old could
Like
do that in about 5
Photoshop
minutes.
or like like an app on their phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do we know about Imager? What do you see up next to where it says Imager? What does that say? Right? It's like anybody can upload anything to this website. And I have kids that notice that, right? They go, oh, or they know Imager because they're like, oh, that's that meme site, right? So knowing a little bit about like how websites work and knowing that is important. And then you can't see it because it's blue on black, but the username is, please Google Shaker Amera, please Google David Kelly. And they're like, what? What's that? So looking at the author, right, looking to see who is this person that posted this. In the Stanford study, and in my own classroom, you know, some kids go, whoa, look at those flowers, right? It's totally crazy, the radiation. I had one kid, like 3 years ago, because that's how long I've been using this image, but they said, well, if there was that much radiation, the film in their camera would have melted or like something like that, you know. So without doing any research, right? We didn't look anything up. We just looked at the image. Those skills, like just teaching kids how, when they see something, like before you do anything, just looking at those kinds of things is really important. So one of the things I did was when I reached out to Stanford to use this study in my book to get permission, they said, sure, that's fine, but to get permission to use this picture, you have to contact the actual author, which I did. The guy who took the picture, he's in Japan. And I reached out to him, thank God for Twitter Translate tweets, because, so we were talking back and forth, and he was like, can you explain to me why all these people were reaching out to me about this picture? I don't understand. And I said, well, it's part of this study around media literacy, and he said, but it's not fake. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, this was taken right where in Japan, like I live right near where this happened. And you know, basically what this is a natural, well, what Snopes will tell you and what other scientists will tell you is this is a natural deformation, I guess, of daisies. It happens. They're not necessarily based on radioactivity. It can happen to any kind of daisy. But he said, look, I've been studying, and he still does. I follow him on Twitter. He still is talking about the disaster because obviously it's not that we've forgotten about it, but they haven't forgotten about it. And so for him, it was kind of like hurtful to say it was fake news. Because he said, actually, this picture was taken where the accident happened, and we don't know, right? So one of the things that's, you know, going back to his author thing is like, you know, going really deep. Yeah, somebody posted that image, but it wasn't the person who took the picture. It was an actual tweet that he tweeted out. That was the actual picture. So if you, and some of my kids, once we have this conversation, they'll actually, you know, we looking up the search terms, we'll look up like Fukushima radioactive daisies tweet, and you can actually see the image of the tweet. This was the original tweet that he sent out. And then somebody took that picture and put it, uploaded it to Imager. You know, you just right click, save it to your computer, and upload it. So, you know, as far as understanding just how important, you know, these are images, right, of other examples of this happening. So one of the things that I always tell my kids is like, this is hard, right? You can't be lazy anymore. Like, unfortunately for you guys, like when I was growing up, you kind of was like, okay, magazine, newspaper, the web wasn't interactive yet, so it was just kind of like, you had like the CD-ROM that you would stick in for the Britannica or whatever. But you guys, unfortunately, you cannot be lazy about this stuff. One of the things that I show them too is, and I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with like screenshots and stuff, but do you guys remember the Macaulay Culkin death hoax?
Yeah.
So there's this great picture, right, it's a screenshot of how many people shared the article on Facebook, and it was like, they were like, oh, it's 2,000. Like, no, it's like 2.1K. Like, or it was like 1 million, right? Like, it was not thousands, it was millions of people. So we talk about like, oh, that's, because this goes back to actually the last slide, that last slide, but one is the idea like, why does this matter, right? So for me, I gotta figure out like, how am I gonna make it worth it for these kids to do this work, right? So showing them this Macaulay Culkin article, ha ha ha, we all laugh, 1 million people fell for Macaulay Culkin dying. Not so funny when President Trump dies, or, you know, some leader, or there's a war, you know, and millions of people share that there's some kind of war going on. That's not so funny. So we also look at deep fakes. So we look at, you know, the Obama deep fake, where you can see people actually make Obama say things that he never, well, he did say them, but not in that order and not at the same time. So I think for me, this idea of why it matters, I think back to those pictures of my kids, right? And I think about the fact that we need kids to be critical, we need them to think critically, we also need them to be models for some adults. And that's the hard part, is adults aren't always the best at this stuff. And in fact, they joke about how it's their aunt that shares that crazy meme. In fact, that meme that I showed you, the Trump meme, was shared by a friend of mine on Facebook. She's not a Trump fan, and she shared it, and I tweeted a link to the Snopes article, messaged it Facebook, the Snopes article, and said, this is actually false. She's like, oh, okay, you know, so I think it's important, you know, to me this stuff really matters. So, let me see what time it is. So, we have time, again, if you, I start a little bit early, but if you have questions for me, or if you want me to go over anything, if you want me to help you get into the document, so this is my information. This Bitly should take you to the resources document that has everything, well, almost everything from the presentation, including the slides. But does anybody have any questions? Okay. Also, if you're interested, I do have a copy of my book up here if you want to take a look, and there's like a flyer if you want to take information. And if you have individual questions or want to talk to me, I'm available. I know we ended a little bit early, but thank you.
Your book's now available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in the header. There's a link to it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job. Thanks. Yeah. I'll be out in the hallway already.
I got it, no problem. I'll see you right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go look at your.
Yeah, sure.
For your lunch. I also use I just try to share the word well,
I mean, I know the course well.
right? There's a whole group of some of the talk about it. I actually
It's like the original books.
and the good part is something going on.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this is-
No.
Sometimes they're worse.
We're, yeah, that's what I think.
I get so much content from my classroom and family.
That's right.
So what do you actually want to start teaching that?
So that's, the framework is, yes, digital literacy means digital citizenship. So the digital literacy part is like, how do you use your Chromebook, how do you use Drive, how do you use Canvas or LMS, how do you send a email to a teacher, but then the media literacy part is stuff, this kind of stuff. And then the digital, so I actually just did a session, a class session about, First Amendment, free speech, and, just online stuff. So it's, yes, it's only
Just this involved, I just give me an option of making an account. So,
And, can I get that on Amazon?
You can also buy that one.
Which is, so,
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
this is a flyer about your book.
Yeah.